everybody, Invisiblekatana here with my review for episode 13 of the Bad Batch Infested. As you can see today, our little guest is a Tsum Tsum Luke. Got that as a I think it was a birthday gift from my little cousin years ago. So, little tiny fluffy Luke. I like the episode. It was good. I always like when they do like kind of pseudo horror elements where it's like, oh, it's really creepy and there's bugs and don't wake up the creatures, which I thought was cool. I liked the way it panned out. Like, it was very simple. They go in, they go home. Basically, it's just a bunch of random dudes in suits. And I was like, okay, it's a bunch of people that look the same. That's trouble. Like, it's somebody's occupying something. They, of course, try to go to Sid's office. Turns out it's been taken over by a man named Roland. And he was cool. I like the way he was handled. And the way that they play his character, where he's obviously a criminal, a family, a legacy of criminals. And ultimately, of course, he loses. But I like the way it was handled, where it was like, he seems like he might come back. He seems like a character that could easily come back, and he could still come back as a villain, because it could be like, oh, he's disgraced by, his mom or, his father even, but he references his mom specifically, so it might be like her side of the family that is really like the big gang. That might be her family line and not his father's. So I was like, that's interesting. Like, he seems cool with them, but they could easily bring that back in where it's like, oh, they either team up or they fight later, something like that. But I was like, he's not dead. And that's always a clear sign whenever someone talks and they have an issue with a set of main characters, and especially when it's on on the planet that they're actually on. Like, he leaves at the end and he's just like, well, I'll be going, and he just turns around and walks. It's not like he got on a ship and left the planet. It was like he just went somewhere else, and that was it. So I'm like, he could easily come back, and they'll probably do that, if not this season, then maybe next season. But I like how they handled this character. He starts off, he's kind of tough, and it's like, okay, he's a serious gang, we can't mess with him. He's also dealing with the Pikes, which we've seen them show up from time to time. Most recently, I believe in Clone Wars, they were in there during Ahsoka's kind of run with things. So I thought it was cool. I was like, okay, they're definitely leaning into that. And I like them as villains. I like how simple they are. Like, everyone's like, don't F with them. I like the voice for those characters. I like how simple they are as far as like, okay, you failed, I guess you're dead now. And I was like, that's easy. That's kind of cool. And even when everything was all said and done, it was like, we can't really trust you because you screwed up and, we had an issue. We were going to kill you, but now we'll just kind of leave you with the lessons. Like, chop his horn off at the end. So I was like, I always like the voice and stuff of the characters, but they're just so simple. It's like, it's like they're 100% calm. Like, even when they could die, they could just get killed. They're surrounded in a room and he's like, I suggest you go back. He was just like, look, don't screw this up, okay? Like, you could kill us right now, but your whole family will know pain. I'm like, what is, like, it was such an evil villain monologue. And I'm just like, that definitely makes the character scary, where he's just super calm. It was like, look, basically it was just like, your whole bloodline, I'll just wipe like, I might die here, your whole bloodline, everything will just be scorched. It's all gonna disappear. Everyone will suffer. And I'm like, that's a really tough position to have, where you're just like, okay, this is how you want to play it. And he was just tough the whole way through. So I always like the characters. I think they're really cool. I hope they really do build up to something with those characters, because I'm like, they're definitely sweet characters. So I hope that's the case. But of course, before they're officially introduced, Sid and the gang end up teaming up, which I love the fact that the two guys playing cards were even in the ship. Like, I just died laughing, because I was like, okay, so Sid's there. Of course, the whole place is taken over. And then as soon as she's like, she's giving the speech about who Roland is and everything, and the Pikes and all that, they're just playing cards in the background. I was just dying laughing. I was like, why are they even here? It was just so funny to me. But turns out they are actually friends. They do help a little bit with them. Ultimately, they got captured, so of course they gave her up. But they did help out with the distraction mission, so that was kind of cool of them. But it was super funny. I was like, I did not expect them to just be on the ship, like, playing. That's just all they do. Like, how do they exist outside of playing cards? It's so interesting to me. But they go through the process explaining everything. It's like, all right, we're going to sneak in. We're going to steal the spice. Everything will be good. They, of course, go through the sewers, or the tunnels, I should say. It's like, don't wake up the nest. Don't make any noise. They're going through. Naturally, Wrecker being Wrecker, he's the one who ends up making some noise. But everything's okay that first time. He drops his flashlight, or torch, as they said. And so everybody's like, okay, well, everything's cool. They go through, they get the spice, they go back. And of course they get tracked down, because it's almost like the classic thing. I swear, every time someone pulls a heist and it's just, all right, we'll just go through like the little trap door that you didn't know about. Every time that happens, it's always instantaneous, where the person's like, oh, we lost this thing. And all they do is turn, and it's like, oh, they didn't like completely close the lid. And it's not completely obvious. And it's just like, all the time. I feel like that's just how it always is. There's always like some random thing where it's like, oh, the little hatch is like slightly up, just a little bit. At least it looked that way. I'm pretty sure it was. It could have been flushed, but I'm pretty sure they show like there was still a little bit of gray where you could see that it didn't like fully close. And I'm like, that's how everyone always is character. I would love to just see that work, where it's just like, okay, they did it and it was successful, and then something else went wrong maybe. And I thought that's what was gonna happen. Honestly, I thought it was gonna be like, okay, they're gonna get the spice, and then obviously we knew the bugs were gonna come into play. I thought it'd be a lot more serious. I thought it was definitely gonna be a bigger issue. I honestly thought when they were being chased down, I thought they were gonna fall through. I was like, this should be really crazy because I thought for sure as they were coming in, like they didn't know about the bugs, so like the enemies are just rolling in. They have the engines blaring. They're crashing into each other. The things are popping off the tracks, falling into the nest. I was like, I think they're gonna drop, and the rest of the episode is gonna be them like fighting their way through these bugs. But it turns out, excuse me, they end up making it through. They end up losing the spice. Of course, they go back like a little bit too early. I think they would have been okay. I'm sure the dude told him was like, hey, the woman I stole, this whole bar from, she's the one who stole the spice. Like, if you just wait for her, like this is her location. So even if they ended up missing them, I'm sure the Pikes would have returned at some point without just leaving like, well, we didn't. She didn't come back to the place that she owns. So I'm sure she would have been caught anyway. But I was like, dang, they were just like a little too quick. They killed everyone in the bar, and then they were bringing the dude on. I was like, oh, that's her. And it's like, oh, well, dang. Like they're like this close. I felt to everything being fine, and then he just walked out with him. Was like, oh, that's her right there. She's the one who stole it. So kill her. So I was like, dang, that sucks for them. But of course, everything works out fine. They get super threatened. It's like, hey, we can't fight against the Pikes. So naturally, they take Omega. They go down. Everything works out. Naturally, again, the bugs fly up into their faces, blah, blah, blah. But ultimately, they escape, and they use a really cool light bomb. I actually like the way that they handled that. So it was a cool moment. I think we all knew exactly how it was going to play out. I do wish it was a bit more intense. Like the scene when they're on the cart rails, I thought that was cool. And that's, like I said, I thought that's where the episode was really going to focus. Like, that was going to be so chaotic that they would also fall down, and then it would be just surviving against all these bugs as they kind of make their way through. Almost like a pitch black type situation. That's what I felt like from this episode. Was like, it was very, definitely a pitch black sort of feeling. The movie, for anyone who has no idea what I'm talking about. The Vin Diesel film, Pitch Black. So, I thought it was cool. I definitely liked the way they handled it. I would have loved to have seen the bugs more. Like, I do kind of wish even the second part was a bit more run and gun instead of like they basically just got the spice and then naturally the thing falls down and so they just fly up in the air and it was like okay, and we see Wrecker shooting them a bunch but not too much really happened, and then of course they drop the light bomb and everything's fine, and I was like okay, it was simple, but I was kind of hoping for like just a little bit more. I would have liked to have seen them actually deal with the bugs for a longer sequence, or like I said, if they just honestly, I think my favorite thing would have been had they fallen over and then the rest of the episode was them just surviving and getting out. And I think that even could have been the aside from, unlike the last two-parter that we got, I think this could have been a cool two-parter had they done that, and then the second half was them escaping, and then they had to go back in and try to kind of do what they did at in the second half of this episode, and that could be its own episode where they try to stealth their way through and get the spice for the Pikes so that they don't all get killed off. So I still enjoyed it for what it was, but I did want to see a little bit more of the bugs, but I'm definitely excited with what we got, or I'm glad with what we got. I shouldn't say excited, but I thought it was a good episode. Decent action. I like that it actually took place on their planet. I feel like they only did that one other time, and even then, I think it was the episode when Omega got her bow, but even then, I think that may have been a different planet. I feel like that was the same planet. They were just in a different area, but other than that, I think every single mission has been off planet. So it was kind of cool. I was like, oh, this is actually kind of interesting. I don't know why, but something about it being such a tight-knit episode where it was like they didn't have to travel anywhere. They did the classic thing. This is probably like the second or third time where it's like they've come back from a mission and it was just like, that mission was crazy. And then it's like, she didn't tell us, they were all on the landing docks and all this stuff. So they explained the mission, then we get into the episode. But I like how they handled it. It was very simple. They seem to have bonded just a little bit with it. Like, they actually went through, of course she threatened them like, hey, the information stuff. But obviously Omega actually likes her anyway. So it seemed like they got a little bit of extra bonding in there. So I enjoyed that. It was like, okay, it seems like they're leading towards something with that. And I'm curious how that's going to end up playing out. Because especially if we go into multiple seasons, is this going to permanently be their home base, or are things going to go crazy? Because I feel like at some point, they keep building it up like, okay, this is kind of where they go to return home and everything's good. And then just like how they were going to leave in this episode, I'm like, if Crosshair does end up showing up, eventually he will track them to that planet. And I don't know if he'll kill Sid or, how any of that's going to play out. But I'm like, I think him tracking them down will eventually lead to him finding out where they stay at, their home base, if you will. And I think they're going to have to end that. So I don't know if that's going to be end of the season type thing or maybe they save that for a second season, but I'm like, that's got to be coming. Much like this war that they keep alluding to, I think that's going to end up happening as well. So we might actually see them leave like they were going to in this episode. It might just be, a little ways down the line. But all in all, it was a good episode. I always like when they do creepy bugs in Star Wars. It's always entertaining. It's always, the bugs in Star Wars are always done up like as really terrifying things because, bugs in Star Wars, it's never just like, oh, it's like a little bug here, a little bug there. It's always like the giant version of something that you don't really want to deal with. It's either, the Mandalorian, it's like the giant spiders. In this, they had the giant flying creatures, which I thought for sure they were going to be spiders because I'm like, it was webs all over the place. Technically, it was just a nest, which like a million different types of creatures do that. But the way it looked, I was thinking webs. So I was like, oh, it's just going to be that planet's version of those bugs because those exact type of bugs exist on different types of planets. So I thought that's what they were going to do, but it ended up being a different type of creature. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. It's, less terrifying, admittedly, because, spiders, like a swarm of giant spiders coming at you, it's way worse. It would have been way worse for them if that's what they were dealing with, but they got the flying bugs instead, so they were good. But I like the episode. Of course, we'd love to know what you guys thought about it, so please put your comments down in the comment section below. Let me know your favorite parts about it, your least favorite parts about it. And there's not much to go as far as theories, but I would like to know if you guys think that Roland will be returning later in the season, or just later in the series in general. And I would like to know what you guys think about the Pikes, because this is the first time technically shown up in this, but they had just recently shown up in Clone Wars. So I don't know if they're really doing much with them, but oddly enough, I feel like this is the most that we've seen of them. I'm sure we've heard of them tons of times in Clone Wars because they are, a big deal. But it's just one of those things where it's like you can hear a lot about a lot of different things, but until they show it, it's just like, oh, that's that thing that's referenced a bunch. And now it's been, the final season of Clone Wars, and now they've officially shown up in the Bad Batch as well. I'm like, okay, they might be leading toward something with them, and I'd like to see that. Like I said, I like how cold and calculating they always seem to be. So I would love to see more of them, but we'll let you know if you think they'll be popping up a little bit more, if Roland will be showing up, and what you guys thought of the episode in general. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.